A Stone in the Storybook, my first glimpse of Ogham. You're very welcome, Fáilte. I am Lora O'Brien and this is the Ogham Academy podcast, where we learn to come into right relationship with Ireland's native writing system. No fluff, no fantasy, just lived Irish tradition and grounded spiritual practice. And I want to start today and this podcast really with a story. Not some big mythic tale, but just a small one, but it stuck. I was maybe 7 or 8. I was curled up on the kind of itchy couch in my Nana and Granda's sitting room in Glasnevin, Ballymun. I pulled a heavy book up from a low shelf under the window. And it was a hardback collection of Irish fairy tales with like these full page illustrations and tiny squash type. And one of the pictures in it, I just opened it randomly, and one of the pictures in it showed a forest path, twisting old trees arching overhead, like a tree tunnel. And there in the background, just tucked into the scene like it belonged, was a tall stone. I remember it clearly. Pale grey, narrow, with what looked like notches or slashes cut along one edge. No one explained what it was. It wasn't the focus of the story at all. It was just part of the landscape. But my eyes stuck on it, and I had this sense, deep and immediate, that it meant something. That it was saying something that I didn't yet understand. And that's the first time I remember encountering an Ogham stone. Now, I didn't have the language for it then. I had no idea that it was an alphabet. I just thought it looked magic, secret, ancient, like it was whispering something across time that maybe I could learn to listen for. Who knows? And that's how Ogham gets a lot of us, isn't it? Not through a textbook or some well-structured lecture, as much as I love the well-structured lectures. It kind of appears in a bit of a dream, in a book illustration, on a windswept walk in the south of Ireland. It calls to you. And later, when we know more, we realise that calling had very deep roots. So Ogham, O-G-H-A-M, or O-G-A-M in older Irish spelling, is the earliest known writing system for the Irish language. It's not a language in itself. That's something people often get wrong. It's a script or an alphabet. And it looks like little lines or slashes cut into the edge of what's called a ridge line, a straight ridge line, which is often the edge of a standing stone, or later was scribbled in the margins of medieval manuscripts or using a horizontal line across the page. So it went from bottom to top on the stones and from left to right when it later came into the manuscripts. It was mostly used from the 5th to the 7th centuries Common Era in its earliest form. Now, there's much debate over how old Ogham is, to be perfectly honest. That's kind of what we can guarantee is one of the earliest forms, right? What scholars call the classical period. And there are theories, though, that it is much older. So while we can't prove it, Professor David Stifter, for example, has said that it could just as well be from the 1st to the 3rd centuries as it could be from beyond then. You'll find Ogham inscriptions carved into upright stones that were often placed at boundary lines or grave sites, so territory markers or ancestral monuments. And many of them just recorded the names, such and such, son of such and such, of this tribe or kin group. Now that might sound mundane, but these were public records of belonging, of memory, of land, of ancestry. And personally, my theory is that there was a bit of magic in them too. that they were as much spells and rituals as they were written records, because these were protected boundaries. These were the edges of tribal lands. And who better to put there than your ancestors, even if in name only? And for those of us today who feel maybe disconnected from place or heritage, Ogham is a powerful reminder. Our ancestors marked the land with their language through the Ogham script. They wrote themselves into stone. Now, in future episodes, we are going to go deep into all that history, how the system works, who used it, what the Ora Kepnanekis says about it, what the surviving stones actually say. But I wanted to start right here at the beginning. That tiny visual seed planted in my own childhood that sprouted decades later into an in-depth history study through my master's, and also into a spiritual practice, a historical obsession, and something of a calling. Because this podcast isn't just about facts and letters, it's about relationship. And every relationship starts somewhere. So maybe this episode is something of a seed for you. I'm going to give you just a little practice prompt. If you've got a journal, open it up. If not, just sit with this for a minute. Where did you first encounter the Ogham, even if you didn't know what it was called? Was it a picture, a dream, a stone, someone's tattoo even? What did it feel like? And what part of you paid attention? So that's your starting place. That's the thread to follow. And I hope you follow along with me through this podcast. Please subscribe, like, review, all that good stuff. Really important, especially for a new podcast. I'm going to give you just a tiny little mini ritual. Now, feel free to ignore this if you're not into it. Grand. But if you do want to, light a small candle if it's safe to do so. Close your eyes. Say out loud in your own words or mine. I call to the memory stone, to the edge-written line, to the sound of Ireland carved in silence. Let me listen. Let me learn. Let me live this rightly. And sit in silence for a few breaths. Let that first connection you ever had with Ogham rise in your mind again. And let it anchor you, gently, to your path. Thanks for being here with me. Next episode we'll talk about what Ogham is not, because the internet is full of shite. Until then, may your path be steady and your questions lead you true. Slán go fóill.